All right, so the first thing we are going to start building is our navbar up here at the top. So let's jump right in. Up here in Webflow, first thing I'm going to do is actually make a div block called page wrapper. I just like to do this so that everything stays contained in one div. It's just helpful for me. And then the next thing we will do is a default navbar elements. This is Webflow's kind of built-in navbar element. It already comes with a navbar setting and a drop-down. If I kind of go into different breakpoints, you could see that here. This is just a helpful place to start, but it does mean that we'll need to adjust some default settings. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a navbar class here. If you're ever wondering how to name classes, you kind of start with what it is typically, and then as you go down from there, like I have a container here, I'll call it navbar underscore container. And this sort of helps you stay organized. You kind of immediately know what to call it. The main thing is you don't really tend to use spaces or capital letters in class names. You certainly can in Webflow if you want to name things that way, but in the code itself, it'll kind of change it to be lowercase and use dashes anyway. So it's helpful to just kind of name it what it is going to be. So here with the navbar, it default applies a background that is gray, but I want it to be transparent. So I'm going to add that in here. Also, I don't think in our variables we added a transparent color. So I'm going to click the purple button here and then click this other plus. And then I'm going to call this transparent white. Or just transparent. And so that is in here. So we have that. The next thing is our navbar container. And this is going to look a little bit different than our default container. I'm going to close this. Because our default container sort of ends at a certain width here, but you can see our navbar kind of extends beyond that normal width. So I'm going to give it a kind of slightly different container. And you can see that there's sort of a default margin here, but I'm going to override that and just make it centered automatically. And I'm also going to set the max width to 100%, which will make it go all the way across the navbar kind of div, all the way across the page. But I do still want there to be some spacing on either side, so I'm going to set the padding to 5% on either side. And I could have done pixels here, but I think percent is going to be a little bit more desirable at larger widths. So that's kind of one of the things that isn't as quite precise, but might make sense if I eyeball it kind of on larger screen sizes. So we've got our navbar container, and if I look in the navigator, we can see there's a brand, a nav menu, and a menu button. Now, since navbar container is kind of its own element, I'm actually going to add an extra div in here to put all of the navbar container things in. So I'm going to call this element navbar wrapper. And I'm going to put the brand in there. I'm going to put the navbar menu in there and the menu button. So you can see that this component came with a lot of different stuff. And so I put it in this element so that we can kind of change the way all of this is spaced out. Because you'll notice in our design, we have the text over here and the button over here. So the way I'm planning to do that is I will kind of have everything in one giant box, and then I'm going to use something called flexbox to kind of put everything here in a box and the logo in a box, so that when we go down to mobile, all of this stuff stays together, but the logo is still separate here on the side, if that makes sense. So to do all of that, we already did navbar wrapper, and it is all in there. Yes. And I am going to start kind of naming these other things too. We'll call this navbar brand, This will be navbar menu. And I'm also going to go ahead and throw in a button element in here too, since that's what we have. And if we're continuing to think about boxes, all of these will need to be in a box too, because there's a bunch on this side, and there's one on this side, there's this here, and then there's a box around this. So hopefully this is all starting to come together, and if not, I promise it'll make sense here in just a minute. So what I just did is I right-clicked it and clicked div block. So that's a really fast way to just kind of put things in a div block if you just want to save a little bit of time instead of having to like add one in and then drag and drop. So that's a good kind of quick tip here. Now with this navbar menu, I want, instead of it all being stacked like this, I want this to go on this side, and I want this to go on the right side. So by default, the layout setting for Webflow is block, so everything will just stack on a new line and take up available width. So these are all together because they have kind of inline width, just meaning that it takes the width of the content that's inside of it. So everything kind of stacks like this. But I want this to take up the whole thing, and I want things to stack horizontally. So one of the best ways to accomplish this is something called flexbox. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. You can see that it automatically applied some different settings here, and there's a few more we can choose from. But basically what just happened is we set things out on a flex horizontal axis here in this box. We've also aligned it so that it stretches from bottom to top. I don't want this, I actually want it to be in the center. And then there is a justify of left. So this doesn't quite make sense in this situation because I want this box to go all the way here to navbar brand. So I'm going to click the width as 100%. So we're not quite there yet, but if I go back to our navbar wrapper, I'm also going to set this at a flexbox. So you can see now that our navbar brand and this whole section here are all on the same line. So we've got a horizontal here, and instead of justifying start, I'm going to do justify between. And then on the navbar menu, I'm also going to do justify between. So you can start to see that this is starting to look more like what we had in mind with the navbar. So we're starting to get the bones in here. We still don't have the navbar logo though. So I'm going to go into our Blitz design file. And I could export this as an SVG and then upload it into Webflow in our assets panel, but I'm going to do something a little bit different that's going to give us a little more control. I'm going to right click, copy and paste as SVG, come into the navbar brand, and I'm going to put in a new element here called embed. So this is going to open up kind of a custom code editor. I know this is no code MBA, but stay with me here. I'm going to copy and paste what I had from Figma into here. And this is going to allow us to just have a little bit more control over the logo itself within Webflow. I'm going to do a few things in this code editor. I'm going to set the width and the height to 100%, so that way we can control the sizing of the element. And then anywhere it says fill, I'm going to change it to current color. And what this is going to do is allow us to change the color of the logo with some Webflow settings instead of all hard-coded into the HTML embed here itself. So I'll click save and close. We can see that is enormous. So in this navbar brand element that's holding it, I'm going to set a max width of, let's say 60 pixels. And I'm also going to set the text color to blue, so you can see that that color is now being inherited from this element. It's still up here, so in our navbar wrapper, I'm going to put everything to the center. So now it's starting to look a little more like our navbar here. Another thing I can start to do here is change the way these links look. I think by default they're looking pretty good, but let's go ahead and just add some classes to these as well. This is all normal. I think we might want these to be medium width. And then I don't think they need to be quite so tall. So why don't we bring the padding down of this a little bit. One trick here is if you hit Option, it will do both the top and the bottom, or both the left and the right, kind of the parallels here. But it is sort of going up there at the top. One thing we can do here is give this div block that has all the navbar links a class. We'll call this navbar link wrap. And we'll also give that a flex and put it here. So I'll give that class to the rest of these as well. And you can start to see here, this is all looking kind of thin. So in our navbar container, I'm going to add a little bit of padding to the top and bottom here. I think that's looking pretty good. So the next thing here is our button element. And with our button, if I go back to our style guide, we can kind of look at what the default button here looks like. And I'm going to take this time to go into a little bit about combo class.
If you found this video useful and want to learn more, be sure to check out our complete guide to Webflow tutorial. It provides comprehensive tutorials and expert guidance to help you build professional grade websites, and also has courses on other no-code tools. And if you haven't done so already, or if you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, share it with a friend, and if you have any questions, leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.